welcome to another slightly different kind of video today. I think I'm going to put this under my know-how category of videos, but I wanted to show you how you can turn your Arteza Mica Powders into watercolour paints, and it works really well with these Arteza Mica Powders. And I originally planned to just make myself a 12 pan palette just because I wanted to see, I wanted to experience the fun process of creating my own watercolours, mixing everything together and stuff. But I just wanted to see or give my mica powders another use, because I keep seeing them on my shelf and I'm like, why have I not used them again? And then I was like, oh well, I can't watercolour with them because you need something to like set them. You can't just add water to them to be able to watercolour, because eventually it will rub off. So I was like, okay, I'll research into it. And I did know that gum arabic you can mix with mica powders to make watercolours. I don't think I mentioned it in my original mica powder up close video, because I was mostly focusing on kind of things that crafters would already have on hand. But the way to turn a mica powder into an actual watercolour is to use gum arabic, whether you use the liquid or the powder. I've been using the powder because I think it's easier, because you can do a 1-to-1 ratio, make it really simple. You can add other things in. I've seen different videos of like people adding honey and glycerin and stuff in, but I've just been using a 1-to-1 ratio of gum arabic to mica powder, and this works absolutely fantastically to turn them into your own watercolours. And originally I was just going to do a 12 pan set like I said, however I really enjoyed the process and got a little bit carried away, and I turned all 60 colours into watercolours. And now I'm gonna I'm doing this video showing you a 12 pan set because my mum wants some, so she's picked out 12 colours that she wants, and I'm gonna turn them into watercolours for her as well. I think I'll probably just show you the real-time process for a couple of colours, and then I'll speed up the rest of the footage and come back at the end and like show you how they perform and stuff as a watercolour. But in my original Arteza Mica Powder up close video, which I will put in one of the 2 little boxes at the end of the video, they come up on the screen like here and here, I'll put it as one of those videos so that you can watch it if you haven't seen it. But there might be some of you who watched that video, got the mica powders, and then have been just like me and keep looking at them like, why have I not used them again, you know, since you've had a first play with them. So this was my original colour swatch sheet from the 60 set of mica powders. So you might just be interested in the mica powders, in which case go and watch that other video, because I gave you loads of different ideas and lots of examples of how I'd used the mica powders. But if you turn them into watercolour paints, they work really, really nicely, and you get all these beautiful different tones of them being on black and white. The left hand side one is on white and then the other one is on black, but you get all these different, I mean like this one here, Wineberry, you didn't really notice so much that there was a green mica in there. And like this one down here, Light Plum, I'm going to show you that one mixed up, it's got blue mica in it. And then you've also got like the chameleon colours down here, and that green one is just superb. And also I was really enjoying the crystal white one. It's got like sort of a chunkier texture than some of the other mica powders as well, but all of them turn really nicely into mica watercolour paints. Or you can see from a distance actually, some of them do have a better reflective quality than other ones. Some of them are more like, they seem to be more pigmenty than mica-y. I don't think there is any pigment in them. I think they are all ground up mica, but obviously some of them just have slightly less of a shine to them, and then some of them have even more of a shine, or they have like 2 different colours in there to show you that sort of iridescent kind of look where it sort of shifts. And you also have all of the white ones here that they all practically look white or a very light colour on white card, and then when you put them on black they all show up with the true sort of mica colour that's in them as well. But obviously the 60 set, there are 60 colours to choose from, so don't feel like you have to make all 60 of them into paints like I have. I think just making yourself like a little 12 pan set just to make you use them more, like because they're just readily accessible to have on your desk. And the reason why I bought these empty containers to put them in, obviously you can just get an empty watercolour half pan box or a whole pan box and make them into whole pans and half pans, but my thought behind it was I'm only going to make myself one palette, and I already have other mica paint palettes that look like this, so I found one that was like an empty version of it. thinking I'll just add one more to the stack that I already have just over here on my desk. But now I have 5 more stacks, 5 more palettes to add to that stack rather than just one more. So, but anyway, whatever kind of palette you have, obviously you can make them into. These ones I just searched for, well, what I found them by was magnetic eyeshadow palette. I think that's what it was. And you get all of the half pans in there as well. So I've taken mine out because I've labelled them all already. But you get the 12 half pans in there and the half pan case, and it's got protection, like a bit of protective plastic on the top, so you can peel that off when you're ready, just so it doesn't get scratched. You can make your own like sticker to go on the top of it to be like Christine's mica powder watercolor paints or something, or you can just leave it so that you can see the paint colours through. And the way I've been keeping track of my colours is I did actually have a packet of stickers, little circle stickers that just so happened to be the perfect kind of size to stick on the back of these. So I was actually labelling mine with the brand, the name and the number, because I thought I might, you know, you never know where I might need to sort of refer back to that. But for my mum's ones, I ran out of the stickers, so I've just written the name on the bottom of the half pan. So if she wants to know what colour it is, she can just flip the half pan over and find out. But you can see how lovely they actually look when they're made into a watercolour. They do just look like normal watercolours that you would buy, like mica watercolours that you would buy, and they work so nicely and reactivate really nicely. And I have a confession to make. I started making these in about January, I think, and I finished them all in like January, and then I've just been so busy I haven't been able to properly make this video for you. So we're kind of also testing the longevity of these paints as well, because I'll make up this palette and show you how you can test them fresh to make sure you've got your ratio of gum arabic to mica powder right, so that it's not going to rub off. And then I might leave these to dry overnight and come back tomorrow to show you how they reactivate after they've, you know, only just dried. And then we can also have a look at how they reactivate once they have been dried for months. When I was using them, they were reactivating really nicely, so I'm pretty sure they're just going to be beautiful to reactivate, and all you've got to do is just leave a little puddle of water on them, and they'll reactivate really quickly. I did actually find, when I was playing with them, I think they reactivate quicker than any other mica based watercolour that I have. You know, a lot of the time you have to kind of leave a puddle of water on there for a few minutes, go off and do something else, and then come back and you can mix it up, and you know, you get a lot of the mica in the paint. But these ones, I found it was quite quick, the way that they sort of released the colour from the pan. So I mean, that could be to do with not having anything else in it other than the gum arabic and the mica powder, I'm not sure, but I thought they reactivated really nice and quickly. So I hope you will enjoy this kind of video. If it's not for you, then obviously don't feel like you have to watch it. But I just thought if anybody out there got the 60 set of the mica powders, or even the other one, was it 30 powders? Or 20 powders, I don't know. There was another set which you had larger bottles in, but you got less colours. So if you have that as well, or they do also sell them individually. So if you, I don't know, for whatever reason needed a massive amount of one colour, you can buy like large tubs of the different colours as well. I'm not sure if they have all of them, but there's definitely a nice selection on there if you did want to get just one kind of colour. But I just thought it would be a really nice video to show you how you can turn mica powders into watercolour paints, which kind of just make them easier to use. Like, obviously in the other up close video I did, there's so many different ways of using your mica powders, but I suppose in our brains we kind of think, oh, mica, you know, we can use that to sort of paint with and add like little extra accents, and it's a little bit tricky because these mica powders are like the cosmetic grade ones. They don't have anything else in them, that you would then have to add a binding agent to them to be able to paint with them. So it would be the whole process of opening the box, picking your colour, just tipping a tiny bit of the mica powder out, you know, mixing up some gum arabic with water so you could then use it with that, and I think it would just be too much of a faff. So I thought actually making your own palette with the watercolours would be a really nice way of using them. So I'll just get everything set up and then we'll start making the first colour. So the set that I've been using, the watercolor palette, it opens up and looks like this. It's got the 12 little wells in there, and there's a magnet underneath so that the pans will stick. And then these are the little pans. I think they're about an inch, yeah, an inch diameter, round pan. And the quantities that I'm going to give you, they will, when it's wet, completely fill this pan, like right up to the top. But when it dries, obviously because we're going to add, oh yeah, it's not just the 2 dry ingredients, we add water to make it into a paint as well. And when the water evaporates, it goes down to about this much in the pan. So you could repeat this process twice to fill the pan if you wanted to, but I've just been leaving them kind of half filled because I think this is going to last a long time just as it is, and if I want to remake another colour, I've got gum arabic left over to be able to just quickly mix up another batch of that colour as well. So yeah, the quantities that I'm going to show you completely fill up this little pan. I think it would probably be roughly the same kind of amount for a half pan as well, but if you want to experiment with different amounts depending on what kind of measuring spoons you have as well, I think it would work nicely. And then the gum arabic that I've been using is the Jacquard gum arabic, which I got from the SAA, so I'll leave a link to that below the video as well as the mica powders and everything. But it's been working really, really nicely. And before I even started making the paints, I decided to, because I actually bought 2 tubs of this, you see, so I decided to take my measuring scoop that I was going to use to measure out you know, equal quantities, and I decided to go for a 1/4 tablespoon measuring scoop. And I actually went through the entire bottle measuring out 1/4 tablespoon scoops to see how many paints I could get from one bottle, and I measured out 42 1/4 tablespoons, but I've already gone through a whole bottle to make all 60 of these paints, but I actually managed to get 48 paints out of this one jar. So the little jars, does it say 1 ounce or 28.35 grams of gum arabic is in these little jars, and you can get 48 scoops worth. If you're using a 1/4 tablespoon, you can get 48 paints worth of gum arabic out of this pot. So I thought I'd just mention that to show you like the economics of this. I think this is like a £5, might be a bit less on the SAA, but yeah, it's a decent kind of price to split between that many paints. So the way I have been doing this, or the way I'm going to do it for this one, is I have written the names on the bottom of the little half pans, and I think I'm going to show you, was it this colour? No, it was the light plum. I want to, oh yeah, I did do it there. Okay, I want to show you the light plum first, because it looks really cool when you mix it up, because it's kind of got like the pinks and purples in there. So, other tools that I was using to create my actual watercolours is I bought myself a cheap pestle and mortar off of eBay again. I think it was $5.99 for the little pestle and mortar. Then I'm also using my Nuvo spoon, just because this spoon is really nice for scooping the paint and helping it out of the pestle and mortar into the half pan. And then I've also been using a palette knife as well to kind of scrape out the pestle and mortar too. So those are the kind of tools that I was utilising as I was making these paints. So as I said, I made these in like January, and it's now May, nearly June, so I'm hoping I can remember exactly how I made them. I'm pretty sure I can. I don't think it was too difficult. And also you're going to need some distilled water, and I do need a pipette as well, which I have misplaced. Oh no, it's there. And then I've just got a little pipette as well, which I'm just going to pipette some distilled water into the measuring spoon, because you want equal quantity. So you want 1/4 teaspoon of gum arabic, 1/4 teaspoon of mica powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of the water, and that will mix it together really nicely into the perfect amount for these little circular inch pans, and it makes the perfect consistency. But I will show you how to check that you've got your ratios right. I have found that with these Arteza ones, a 1-to-1 ratio with the gum arabic works perfectly, and when it's dry it doesn't rub off on your hands. But if you're working with a different brand, you might want to give it a little try. You might need a bit more gum arabic to stop anything rubbing off the surface when you've painted it onto a piece of paper. So we'll start with 1/4 tablespoon of gum arabic, and to make it kind of a little bit fairer, we can actually use the palette knife to scrape off the top. So we've got a completely flat measuring spoon of the gum arabic, and we can put that in there. And then actually this was how I was doing the mica powder. I was using the tonic spoon to get the mica powder out of the pot because the measuring scoop is too big, and obviously you don't want to keep tipping because then you might get too much coming out. So what I was doing is holding the scoop with one hand and then putting the spoon into the mica powder pot, scooping it in, and then just pressing it down so that we can get a nice flat top to it as well, so we're getting equal proportions. And you can see this one looks quite pink, but it actually has a bluey purpley mica inside it that you see as you're mixing it up, which I thought was really cool, which is why I wanted to show you this one on camera. Okay, so that is the same amount that we had of the gum arabic, and then we can tip that into there as well. And then I was using, because I've already made the spoon dirty, I was using the spoon to help combine the powders together, and they are about the same grade of powder, which is really nice. And a lot of the videos, well, I couldn't find that many videos on it, but the videos that I was watching of how to make watercolour paints, they were using a glass muller and onto like a glass surface to get the really fine particles of the mica and the gum arabic and stuff. But I found just the pestle and mortar works really nicely, and you don't have to work it too much either. It's a pretty simple process, which is nice. So then we're using distilled water. I just prefer to use distilled water. After years ago I didn't use distilled water to dilute some ink sprays, and now they smell. So I just decide to use distilled water all the time now when I'm making something that I know I want to last a while. So any sprays I water down or making paints and stuff, I'm going to be using distilled water, just because I don't want that stagnant smell, because it's not very nice when I'm using the inks that I watered down and you get a kind of stagnant sort of smell from them. So I'm just going to get some water, pipette it into the little measuring spoon, and then tip that in. And then we can just get the pestle and start mixing it all together. And it really doesn't take that long because it's already such a fine ground of powder. I'm sorry for that horrible noise. I don't know if it'll come across too bad on camera, but if it is really bad, I'll mute it for the next one. But you can just start mixing it around, and look at that gorgeous bluey kind of mica that you can see in there, bluey purpley mica with the pink. Really, really pretty. I just think it looks so magical when you're mixing them up as well. So that is pretty much all mixed together. So you can see it doesn't take long at all. You could go for longer if you wanted to, but it really doesn't take much time. Then we've got our little half pan, which I've labelled with light plum on the bottom. And then all I was doing before when I was making them was just trying to scoop off as much as I can from the actual pestle. I think this is called the pestle, and the bowl's the mortar, because I kind of think mortar like in you put, or like bricks and mortar, the mortar holds everything together, so I feel like the mortar would be the bowl and then the pestle would be this part, but I'm not actually sure which one's which. And then you just want to go in with your spoon and scoop it out into here. And I've just found that having the palette knife there as well, sometimes you need to sort of scrape the edges with the palette knife to get the last remnants out of the bowl as well. So we can just top it up. Oh, got a drip on there. Okay, we can try and get a little bit more out from the mortar with the palette knife kind of just scrapes along the surface a little bit better than the spoon. You can see there I've managed to like get the white back. It just seems to get a little bit extra out, and it doesn't matter if you like fill this right up to the meniscus, because when the water evaporates, it's just going to flatten out and sort of sink down into the little pan. Okay, I think that's a decent amount out of there, and you can see how nicely that's filled the little pan. And then what I also like to do, well, we can just like scrape the last bit out of the spoon, but what I also like to do with the half pan once we filled it is I like to like pick it up and then drop it, just to make sure there's no air bubbles in there. I haven't had any with air bubbles. Sometimes an air bubble appears because you've added like water in it, and then it's sort of got underneath some of the pigment, and you get like, oops, nearly dropped it. You get like this kind of effect in there. But I haven't actually noticed too many air bubbles, because when I was making them, I was sort of tapping like this to hope that there wasn't that much air in them. And then you just want to leave this on a flat surface. So I was just having the palette there and putting them all on top of the palette and then leaving that somewhere so that they were all drying on the same kind of flat area. And then I was also doing this, because we don't want to waste that last bit of mica that's there. This is the leftover of all 60 of my paints. So every time I got to this stage, you put some more distilled water in there, mix it around with the pestle and mortar, and you're sort of cleaning them off a little bit. And then I was just pouring it into here, and obviously it's been a few months, so everything's evaporated, and you're now just left with like this clump of all different colours of mica. It looks quite pretty though, even though it's gone a browny grey kind of colour because it's all the different colours. I still think you could do something with this and use it as like a neutral background, neutral mica-y background or something. So I've just been saving them all. It also, you know, saves you washing it down the drain as well. You probably don't really want to wash gum arabic down the drain. So just adding like a little bit of water into the pestle and mortar and then mixing it around. Just helps to kind of like clean it out a little bit, and then we can just tip that into there, and then over time that water will evaporate just like it does with the little half pans, and we'll be left with just that colour added in. Although that mica's quite dry now because it's been in there a long time, so it has just sort of soaked into it. But we could actually tip some more water into that and dissolve that mica back into a watery solution, so that pink and all the other colours will just mix straight in as well. So we've already got like a thick mica-y slurry, and that was hardly any time at all. That was literally seconds. So it really does dissolve nicely back into water, which means that they're quick and easy and ready to go when you need them, which is really lovely. So that is just what I've been doing with the leftovers. And then I was just using a piece of kitchen roll and a baby wipe to clean out the pestle and mortar. So I'll clean up and I'll be back to show you one more colour in real time, and then I'll either speed up the rest of them or just jump to me finishing them off. So another one that I thought looked pretty cool when I was mixing it up into a paint the first time around was the Chameleon Green. And in the mica powder sets, I went through this in the main video months or possibly even a year or two ago. I can't remember how long it's been now. But there are 3 colours in the mica powder set that are called chameleon colours, and they don't have much powder in the pot because all of the pots are weighed out by grammage rather than by volume. So some of the micas and stuff that they've used in certain colours are heavier, more dense, so you get less of them. But you're still getting the 5 grams, there's just less within the bottle because they're heavier, but they are so pretty. And honestly, just using that quarter of a tablespoon, it really doesn't use up that much of what you've got there compared to you know, like other uses. I mean, I know obviously it's going to be more than another use, because most of the time you're just kind of like dusting them over some sticky ink, or maybe over double-sided adhesive, or sprinkling them into things and stuff. But obviously the number of times you're going to be able to reactivate this paint and keep using it for different projects. I think it's worth using a 1/4 tablespoon scoop of one of these because it's such a beautiful paint when it's made. I mean, I've got this one already made here. I think the Chameleon Green is the best. So this is the Chameleon Green, and you can see really pretty kind of colours in there, and I have a actual background that I've used it on here as well. It's these blobs here, and you can see it's got red in it too. If I shine it like that, it's sort of like a pinky red, and then it's beautiful and green. So it's this one here, but really pretty. Look how sparkly this one looks compared to the others. These are all the mica powders, but that is the Chameleon one, and it looks so much sparklier and cooler. So I definitely think it's worth turning the Chameleon ones into your watercolours. So we'll start off again. I will only just, oh, that's the empty bottle. I will only just show you this process twice, and I'll just speed through to the completed 12-pan palette when they're all dried overnight, as I think it will just be, you know, a more concise video then. But basically we're just doing the exact same thing, taking our 1/4 tablespoon scoop, levelling it off, putting it in there. And then we're using the little spoon. Any spoon will do. You do actually get a spoon in the 60 set. It's a tiny little plastic spoon, which you could also use for this purpose too. I just have this tonic one and I really like it, so I've been making use of it. So it's literally like maybe 3 of these spoons. And actually, once I've made this one, I will show you how you test that you've got your ratios right between the mica powder and the gum arabic as well, because I just realised I haven't done that. So let's move that one over there so I don't do it again. And then we tip that in. We mix up the mica powder and the gum arabic together. Obviously, I'm not an expert at manufacturing and making watercolours, whether it's mica ones or just normal watercolours. So, I mean, this is just from like a crafter's perspective making these, but there are a few other videos out there of other people making watercolour paints as well. So feel free to like go and check them out as well before you decide if you want to make any watercolour paints with your mica powders. But I've just thought it's a really nice, fun, relaxing activity actually. Obviously I made 60, and I think once I got up to speed, it probably took like 10 minutes per paint, you know, like with the cleaning out everything in between. So, you know, to make a 12-pan set, it's a couple of hours of just kind of like mindless sort of sitting there watching a film maybe, and making the paint, and I was really enjoying it. So I think it's a really nice kind of process as well to actually make the paints, and then you've obviously got them to use afterwards as well, which is really nice. So we'll put our 1/4 tablespoon of distilled water in there. And then we can mix it around. And look at the beautiful green that's in there now, because that water sort of reacted with the mica, or made the mica more visible. I think this one, the reason why it's more sparkly is because it is a slightly less finely grounded mica. So I think the little mica bits are slightly bigger, which gives it that gorgeous sparkly effect. So you don't want to mill it for too long, otherwise you're going to kind of get rid of those particle sizes. But I think this one is just so pretty. All the different colours, the red and the green that's in there, it's just so gorgeous. Okay. And then we've got our little half pan, and then we just want to scrape as much off of here as we can. You might even have an old pestle and mortar that you've not used, that you've got in the kitchen, that you could use for this kind of thing. Obviously not if you then want to use it in the kitchen, but I mean, you might have had it for years and never used it, so this could be a use for it. But they're not too expensive on eBay. I think this was $5.99, so not too bad. And I'm sure there's other things you can do with it as well, different techniques and stuff. You might be able to even make these paints out of other products too, maybe like shimmer powders or pixie powders or pixie sparkles, all sorts of stuff like that. You might even be able to turn them into watercolour paints with a similar process. so pretty, this one. Okay, so that is that one. We can tap that again to get the air bubbles out. I don't think there really are many, but it's worth tapping it just to make sure. And I'll leave that off to the side. I'm going to quickly clean all of this up, and then I'll be back to show you how you can test your paints before they've completely set, to know if you then need to like tip it out. Actually, we could test it from this. Wait a second. Yeah, let's test it from this. So you might, yeah, this testing process, I've kind of forgotten because it was so long ago that I made the other ones, but you can do the testing process from this stage. So imagine I hadn't filled the half pan already, and you're basically, I mean, I can just do this with my finger. Oh, that's a little bit chunky because it was off of there, but we can just spread out some of the paint as if we were kind of painting with it, maybe even add a little bit of water to water it down as well, to sort of show how we would kind of use this in a background. And then we could also do it with the pink. Obviously you can do that with a paintbrush if you don't want to put your fingers in it. We can just add a little bit of water to sort of show how we would turn this into a watery background. So before you even put them into your half pan, do this little test, and then instead of having to wait for that to dry, we can heat it with the heat gun, and then we can test and see if the mica is going to transfer onto our hands or not. Okay, so that's pretty much dry, although there's a blob of water there, so I'll just mop that up. So this hand is the cleanest. So if I now rub over this, you can see, I don't know if you can see, no mica has come off of that. So we know that the ratio is good between the mica powder and the gum arabic. I think this one maybe transfers a tiny, no it doesn't actually. That is actually perfect as well. So the 1-to-1 ratio just makes it so that the mica powder isn't going to rub off when you use it, because if you watched the previous video you'll know that I said if you just use the mica powders with water they would rub off. If you rubbed over it over time they would sort of come off the paper because there's nothing to bind them to the paper, but the gum arabic is a binder which stops it from rubbing off of the paper. So before you've even put this into your half pan, do this test, and then you will know that you've got your ratios right. And then if you're using the same brand of mica powder like all of the Arteza ones, the same ratio should work for all of them, and then you'll get the nothing coming off on your hands, which is really lovely. So I just thought I'd definitely show you that as well. That's how in the beginning, the first few colours that I made, I did this for like the first 5 colours just to check that I got my ratios right, and then after that I just you know, went ahead with all the rest of the 60 colours because I knew that they were gonna be the same, you know, kind of mica powder and stuff. They're the same sort of particle sizes and stuff, that it was gonna be consistent through the rest of the colours. You could check every single colour if you really wanted to and like really tailor them to the amount, but if, you know, it's easier and quicker if you just use the same ratio for all of them. But that is kind of like the gorgeous effect that you can get from then using the mica powders as well. So I'll clean all this up, I'll finish making all of these, and I'll come back tomorrow when the 12 pan set is kind of like dried overnight, and sort of we can do a test between pans that have been dry for months and pans that have just freshly been made as well, and we'll see how quickly they react, and I'll show you some examples as well of stuff that I've done with them. Okay, so it's the next morning, and these are all of the freshly made paints. They're not 100% dry yet. I don't want to tip them in case they all slide off and go everywhere, but they're not 100% dry yet, and you can see the ones that kind of have I suppose, slightly larger kind of mica in them. It kind of settles, like this one it's gone around the edge, this one it's also gone around the edge, and then the gold has kind of got it going through the middle of it. But they just look so interesting and lovely as they're drying, and it's quite a nice process to kind of watch and see how much they sink down. For example, this ice white one, you can see there's probably like a millimetre there because it's not completely dry yet. It still needs to more of the moisture to evaporate, because this is the exact same amount, but after it's been dry for a few months there's probably like 2 millimetres there, so they will sink down more as they're sort of drying. But I've gone through all of my 5 palettes and picked out the exact same colours that we were making yesterday, and so that is what these ones, I made them in January and I haven't used them for at least a month. It's probably closer to 2 months because I've been busy with other bits and pieces, but that is kind of, you know, the state that they look in. And I have used this one quite a lot, and which probably explains the kind of weird formations that are in that one, and also the Aztec Gold I've used quite a bit as well. But you can see, I suppose there's not too much of a difference between them. I mean, these aren't completely dry yet, but we can do a little experiment. I was hoping that these would have been dry, but I suppose we can still do the experiment and see like the quickness that they will sort of come back to life. So I've got quite a few pots of water so I can wash off my brush in between, but if we start with like the lighter colours, I think that'll be a good way to show it. So I've just got a paintbrush, and if I get it wet, and then this is the one that isn't quite dry yet. You can see it's still mushy on the surface, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to easily pick it up without messing it up too much. But if I just pick a little bit up, so I mean this isn't kind of reactivating because it's still actually wet, but we're kind of just mixing it up with the water. And if I clean the brush off and get some more water on this, I don't know if this is really going to show with the white one, but I've got a little tiny swatch of the white on there, and then if we go sort of halfway across the paper and show how quickly it kind of reactivates. So it's not too much of a long time to wait. I might have contaminated this one. It looks slightly more of a creamy colour than white. It's probably not the best thing to show you with the white one. So we'll go on to the next colour. So the next colour that I've put down is the Amethyst Purple. So again, this is the one that's not quite set yet, so it's not going to be like an actual sort of re-wetting test for that one. But this is the gorgeous purple colour. I've put quite a lot of water on my brush, which is why it's coming out, you know, quite watery. And then we can re-wet this one. And I really do find that these re-wet much quicker than other brands of paints that I have that are like pre-made in the pans already. So I think they're really good for that kind of thing. Obviously I will come back and show you this completely dry as well. So hopefully we should see, I've never done this sort of test before, so we should see that the amount of like mica-y stuff within them should look the same, depending on whether you've picked it up, you know, as while it's still wet, or whether it's one that's been dried for a while. But I just wanted to show you like how quickly they're reactivating. So we'll go with the next colour. I think this is the Iris Purple, I think. So I'm kind of just scooping out some of the wet paint there. So these ones might be a little bit more pigmented, I'm not sure, because of the way that I'm doing this experiment, but I just really wanted to show you how like quickly they re-wet. Like you're just moving your brush around for like a few seconds and you've instantly got that lovely strong colour coming out of the pan, which I just think is so great compared to some other ones that you might have had in the past, and you've got to kind of leave a drop of water on them for a while whilst they sort of get ready to let off their colour. Then we've got this one, which is, which colour is this? I think this is Sapphire Blue. So this might be quite strong, yeah. But that is like, oh, that is really pretty, that one. That's got quite a lot of mica in there. And then I'm just cleaning my brush, getting a bit of water on it, and then we'll reactivate this Sapphire Blue. I really love how quickly they reactivate. So I do think these, like, I think they make great paints, but I also think just the process of making the paints is just really cool as well. I really enjoyed making all of these paints. You can tell because I've now made 72 different paints, because I've gone through all 60 of them and then remade another 12 as well. This one's still really juicy. This is the Aztec Gold, but this is a really lovely gold. I think this is my favourite out of the golds, because obviously I've made every single colour into a paint already. I kind of know which ones are sort of my favourites of them, and I do think that Aztec Gold is beautiful. It's also really lovely in their acrylic paint as well, because they do often use the same names across their ranges, which I think is really nice. So we can get some Aztec Gold. I think this one is maybe, oh no, it has loosened up. I was going to say it's slightly more difficult to get the colour out, but I did kind of scoop up a really juicy part for that one. Then the next one is the Chameleon Green, which is really pretty. And this one does have that kind of a little bit chunkier kind of mica in there. I really like this one. And I will show you some examples of where I've used these in a couple of projects that I did a little while ago. Okay, so that one is slightly harder to reactivate. You might want to leave a drop of water on that kind of one. I suppose it's just sort of getting those larger particles to sort of release. But still, it's not too difficult to get that one going. Also, I don't know if any of these that I've got left are going to fall out, but one thing to notice is you can actually make these into a pan and then tip them out. Some of them are looser than others, and now typically I don't think any of these ones are the loose ones, and the other ones I've already made wet. Oh yeah, none of these will come out, but some of them do drop out of their pans, so like depending on what kind of palette you have as well, you might be able to like make them into like actual half pans and then tip them out and put them in a palette, depending on what kind of palette, because I know some palettes don't have actual half pans, like they actually just have like the moulded plastic, and then you could put the extruded paint into it. So that might be another way of doing them as well. Next one is Spring Green, which is a gorgeous bright green colour. Get a little bit more of that. And then we'll go for the re-wetting of this one. Really pretty. And then the next one is Turquoise, which is another one of the ones that had slightly larger kind of mica-y particles within it. But really gorgeous colour. And then we re-wet this one. This one might be slightly more tricky to reactivate, just like the Chameleon one, because of those larger mica-y particles in there. But it's not too bad actually. And obviously if you want a thicker consistency of the paint, you can go to that method of leaving like a drop of water on them and then mixing it up to get that really thick, sort of almost more like a gouache-y kind of consistency. But if you're just going for the watercolour look, they, you know, reactivate really nice and quickly. Okay, then the next bit, maybe I will turn my card around and turn these around so that you're still sort of closer on the screen. Yeah, that should work. So we'll go with this one. This is the Light Plum. I think that's what it's called. I'm just looking for the names on the top of the... Yeah, it is called Light Plum, the last one I look at. Yes. This is the gorgeous one that I showed you how I was mixing it, and it's got that like blue mica in there. And I will show you this when it's dry so you can see those kind of effects coming through as well. You can see how nice that one reactivates. Then the next one is Rose Pink, Oh, that one was loose in the pan, but it didn't fall out before. That's weird. Okay, that's the gorgeous rose pink. Then we've got the strawberry red. This is kind of like a really deep, gorgeous red, almost like a coppery red. The next one is actually copper, so we'll see the difference between the two of them. But it's a really nice orangey red. And then the final one is that copper colour. So you can see how none of these had dried. I reckon, you know, like a couple of days and they will be completely dry for you. But I mean, you can still use them when they're this consistency. But obviously I'm just showing you that, you know, once you've left them and they have completely gone rock solid, they do reactivate really nice and quickly, so. Okay, so that is all of the colours, and then I might show you what I was saying about getting a thicker consistency. So if I just probably just do it in the one that's been dried for a while, if I leave a little bit of water on there just to activate some of that paint, we can see how much thicker we're going to get a consistency rather than a sort of watercoloury look. We can get a nice thick kind of consistency. If you've just left a little bit of water on there to sort of dissolve everything again, you can actually get a much thicker look from the paint. So I'll leave these to dry, the little swatches, and then I'll come back, show you these. I'll give you another close-up look at the entire swatch sheet as well for all 60 of the different colours, and I'll show you a few examples of when I was using them to create a few different backgrounds as well. Before we let it dry, I just thought I've still got this here, which is the mixture of all of the colours together. So if we swirl that up so that the actual mica from the bottom is mixed in with all of this, we can see what kind of colour this comes out. I do think it looks quite pretty actually. That is quite nice. We can see how this dries as well actually. So that's why I thought I'd do it now, and then we can wait for the little swatches to dry and come back and have a look at this and see if we can see any of those mica colours in there. But I don't think you actually get a colour that looks this colour. But this is all 60 colours mixed together plus a duplicate of 12 of them as well. So I think this is a really interesting colour to have as well. It's sort of like a dark minky browny kind of a colour. But yeah, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, so here are all of the swatches dried. So these are all the fresh colours. I thought I'd label it in case I forgot. But those are all of the fresh colours there, plus these ones down here. So you can see they've got that gorgeous mica in them. They're kind of slightly more subtle, but obviously if you leave the water on them, you know, to reinvigorate them, you know, even the ones that have been dried for a long time, you will get that more richer kind of mica effect if you've used them more thickly. I don't know if that's coming across on that middle one. They look more intense really if you do mix up a thicker consistency of them, and I like to do that especially when I'm doing splattering or adding like fine little details on, because then it really shows up. And then the dried paints that were like dried in the pans, you can see I don't think there is really much of a difference in the amount of mica that you're seeing from them. It is quite difficult. They're nice, like subtle sort of mica shimmers. It's kind of hard to show on camera. In person you can see that mica effect more than you can on the camera, but that's the fresh ones, and then that's the dried ones. So I don't personally think there is much of a difference between them. And then this is the dried pans, and then these are the fresh ones. So I don't think there is too much of a difference between, you know, using them immediately once you've made them and for ones that have been dried for like a few months. So I think that's really good to know. But if you are like underwhelmed by the amount of mica-y pigment you get off from just like wetting your brush and smushing it around in the pan, you can do the method of like leaving a drop of water on the pan so that everything really gets all juicy and thick, and then you can use it that way and you get more of a mica payoff. I don't know if you can really tell on the camera. It's so annoying with mica powders that you can't get a proper accurate representation, but you can see just the colour is deeper anyway. So if you want that more intense look, you can do that kind of process to get a thicker consistency. And then this is that weird 60 colours all mixed together. But I actually quite like it. I think I'm going to wait for some of that water to evaporate and then tip it into a few of the little pans that I've got left over and make my own little custom colour, because I think that's actually quite nice. You can see all those different colours within there. And it's quite sparkly as well because of those, some of the mica powders have got those larger chunks of mica within them. But I quite like that colour. I think that's a really nice unique colour, which you don't get from if you make all 60 of them into watercolour paints. There isn't something that's that colour, so it's quite interesting to create your own kind of colour. And again, this is kind of difficult to show you, but that is all of them on white and black. So only really these kind of ones down here and the chameleon ones, these three down here, have that dramatic kind of difference on black, where the different kind of mica that's in there shows through. The others, there's a slight sort of difference, and you might notice them being a little bit more see-through on black than if you put them on white. Like for example this coral one up here, you can see more of the black around it, whereas it looks more of like an opaque sort of colour on the white, but when you put it on the black you realise it is quite transparent. But those are all of the 60 of them made into colours, if you're interested, again, in a closer look at that. And then I've just got a few little experimenty kind of things as well. So these are like different backgrounds that I was making before. So this is using lots of the different greeny tones, and these gorgeous blobs that I did show you earlier are that Chameleon Green, which I think is one of my favourites. I really love how that looks. It's got like gold, green, and then it looks red in other lights as well, which I really love. I think it just is so different, and you can see the splatter even looks red as well. And this was just me having fun creating a few different backgrounds, and I did a sort of rectangular brushstroke version with the same colours too. So these are perfect to just, you know, start straight away making a card with these. Just an instant background. You can just add a die cut sentiment or little critters or something on there, or like an aperture, make it into a shaker card, all sorts of different things. Then this was just showing like making them into a watery sort of wash, and you can see, I suppose, as with like the little swatches, where the I suppose where you've mixed it up thicker, or where a lot of the mica powder has congregated, you get more of a shine in those areas. So I quite like that random sort of look, that it's like wishy-washy in a lot of the areas, but then there's just a few places where the mica is kind of built up, and I think that looks really lovely. I think this with a little bit of overstamping and maybe even some stenciling on top of it as well would look really lovely as the beginnings of a card. And then this one was doing this kind of a background just with the brush strokes, but using a lot more water. This was sort of using them more in a neat form, and then this was using a lot more water to kind of see how they all sort of bled around, and the bloomy kind of effect that you get from it as well. And with those blooms, the mica and like pigmenty stuff that's in there kind of gathers around the edges, and because of that gum arabic, in some cases you'll get that shiny little look, because the sort of binder has built up in those areas where the mica and everything is built up, and where it was like a thicker consistency where you put it down. So I thought that was a nice kind of look to show. And then I was also experimenting with salt, and I think they work really nicely with the salt effect background. So you basically just do like wet the whole background, drop in a load of the colours. You might want to mix them up into that thicker consistency because you've already added a lot of water to the card so that you've got that more intense colour. And then you just sprinkle salt in while it's wet and let it dry, and you get this really cool effect. I think this looks different to when you're using salt just with watercolours without that mica in there. So I think this gives a really cool effect, and that it's really dotty. I don't know if that was just the small granules of salt or whether that was actually like the mica, but there's no salt left on there now. I flicked it all off when it was dry, but I really like the way that one turned out. And then I was also trying the cling film technique because I wanted to show you that sort of a look as well. And I also want to show you this. So sometimes when you're using mica-y paints or powders and stuff that have the mica in, and you do this cling film effect, the way that all of the mica congregates under those folds of the cling film, it often rubs off. But because we made them and put the binder in there, it doesn't rub off at all. Which is really nice as well, because I do find that annoying that you've got this cool effect and then you've been touching the card whilst you're putting it together and stuff, and then you're like, oh, some of it's kind of like disappeared because it's sort of fallen off or rubbed off, but this stays on there really nicely, and look at that beautiful shine that you get from it as well. Then I was just playing around with doing like a stripy background and another sort of messy bloomy kind of background. This is the kind of background you'd make something like this, and while it was still wet you'd sprinkle the salt into it to get that cool effect, or again whilst it's still wet put the cling film on the top of it, and then you'd get that cool. I think I did use the same colours actually, so one is with the cling film and one is just leaving it to dry. And you get those lighter areas when you've used the cling film because all of the mica and coloured bits want to sort of go underneath all the folded areas. But I really do love this kind of a look, and I really love that it just doesn't come off as well. So I think that's a massive plus to making your own kind of mica paints and putting in the Gum Arabic binder in there as well. So those are just some like backgroundy, experimenty, techniquey things that I thought I'd show you, because this is the kind of way that you might want to use normal watercolours, so therefore you might want to transfer that over into a mica based watercolour that you've created, and I wanted to show how good the results are. And then you've probably seen these art journal pages already, because when I did my video with the brand new Nuvo alcohol pens, I showed you these art journal pages as well, so you can tell it's been a while since I actually used these mica powders, because I made the backgrounds for these pages before I'd coloured the images as well. So, but there's mica in the background here. So this background, all of these art journals, they're ones that I created from jelly printed scrap papers when I was having a jelly printing session like last November. And I just put them all together to make little journals. So some of the paint is jelly printed on, some of it, I think this dark purple in the background, I scraped on with like an old gift card, and then I also used like white gesso on here as well. And then right in the background is where the mica paint comes in. You can see all around here this light purple colour is the mica paint colour, and you can see that mica within there. And it's sort of in different areas around here. And the greeny coloured splatter, I think that was the mica powder as well. Yes, I think it was actually. So that is the mica powder kind of splatter in there too. And then also the accents on the butterfly are also the same purpley mica powder that I was putting in the background, is the accents on the butterfly, just adding like little dotty details and stuff. And I think it just really adds to an art journal page. Don't think you just have to stick to acrylic paint. If you started using acrylic paint, you can mix in your water-based paints as well. Obviously they're going to react differently and not really stick on top of acrylic paint unless it's a matte acrylic paint. But I think it's nice, especially on this kind of page where you've randomly applied acrylic paint to the background, but then you go, oh, actually the white paper is kind of too harsh against the dark paint that I've put on there and you want to colour the background, but then if you went with acrylic paint, you would cover up some of the stuff that you've already put on and you like the look of that. So having like a watercolour or a mica watercolour just sort of kind of colours the background, and some of it has stuck on top of the paint as well, so you can like integrate it into the background really nicely as well. So that was just one of the pages. And then I also was using it for little accents on these flowers that I coloured in. So any of those little splatters and little dotty details and details on the leaves, that is all the mica powders. It turned into watercolour paints as well. So that's another example. And then I was also doing this dragony page, and the accents on the creatures, so on the mug and stuff, that is the mica paints, and like the pink in here, the little accent of the crystal white around the eyes, and then I've also added in some of the like bronzy kind of colour splatter into there as well. Some of that is a paint that I was using, but these brighter pieces that are shining are actually one of the mica powders. And I've also like drawn little swirly elements in the background as well. I think that was a light pink colour. So they just add really nice elements that you don't always see from looking at it straight above, but then as soon as the light catches it, it just looks really pretty. So that's another example. And then I think the final one is just this one, where again I've used them to accent over the top of my alcohol pen colouring, and I've just sort of added little hashes, splatterings, little outlines. Have I done anything on the bird? No, I don't think I did. Little hearts on the leaves up there, just to add little extra accents. The swirls in his beard, in some of the hearts down here, and then like accenting the cactus, the door of the caravan, you know, just like extra little accents just to give that visual interest. As somebody tips your journal in the light, you just see those extra accents. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video showing you how I was turning the Arteza Mica Powders into acrylic paints. I'll just get the actual box as well. So this is the set of 60 mica powders, and then I was using gum arabic to turn them into the watercolour paints. So and this is really reasonable, and I will link it below as well. The SAA was the best price that I could find it. I did see it on eBay and Amazon, but I think it was like twice the price, so I definitely recommend going to the SAA if you can, if you're in the UK, that is. I presume they would ship all over the world, but I know they're based in the UK, so I'll definitely make sure to link the mica powders and the gum arabic down below. And then the palettes that I was using are, I just searched for magnetic eyeshadow palette on eBay and I found them that way. But again, you obviously can just use a normal empty half pan watercolour palette as well. And I don't think they come with the half pans, but on the SAA website there is a White Night empty palette, which I can actually show you. It looks like this. Oops, I'll zoom out a little bit. The White Night empty palette looks like this, and it can hold like 48 or 60 depending how you put them in, of the little pans. So I actually have all of my Arteza gouache in here, so I actually fitted in 60 and I made it so that the white was a whole pan because I knew I used the white more. So I'll link to this empty palette below as well. I think you do have to buy the pans or half pans individually, but you could obviously make these paints into half pans or whole pans depending on what you want to buy to put in here as well. So I think this would be another great palette for these metallic watercolours, and if I knew that I was going to get obsessed and make all 60 of them into paints, I probably would have done it into something like this, because, you know, it's quite convenient to have all of the 60 colours out within this small area in front of you. But, you know, as I said at the beginning, I was only planning on making like 12, possibly 24 colours into paint, but I got a little bit obsessed. So, I mean, the advantage about having these little palettes is that the half pans are removable and they're just in a set of 12. So, for example, if you were going away somewhere or you just wanted to do a little bit of art journaling on your lap, you know, in front of the telly, you could have like an empty one of these that you kept, and then you could just pick out your 12 favourite colours that you're always going to, or 12 that would work with that project, and put them in one of these empty pans. But again, you can do that with this kind of a palette too. If you have a small half pan palette, you could pick out the colours that you want from a whole set of 60 like this. I did actually rig this palette though, so all of mine are actually stuck in, because it's not supposed to hold 60 half pans. It's actually designed for the White Night full pans of colour, which are slightly different size to an actual full pan of colour. So what I did for this is I actually stuck the Arteza 3D foam tape behind these, you know, it's got a red liner on it. I actually stuck that in the channels and then pressed all of my half pans into it so that they would fit really nicely into this palette as well. But this is just another alternative way of making your metallic watercolours. If you wanted to have them all in one palette, you could actually do that with something like that. Or from the Arteza website, you can actually get an empty 48 pan palette that comes with the half pans, or a 24 half pan palette as well. So if you just wanted to go for 24 or 48 of the colours, you could get an empty half pan palette on the Arteza website as well. So I'll link them below too, just in case you're interested. I am hoping to be able to get a 10% discount code for you, so if I do manage to get one, it will be up here in this bottom corner of the video, and I'll make it the first thing in the description video as well, so you can easily copy and paste it if you do want to take advantage of a 10% discount code. And all of the links in the description will be affiliate links, whether they're to the SAA or to either of the Arteza websites. So if you do purchase anything through those links, I will get a small commission at no extra cost to you as well, and I do really appreciate you using them. I know sometimes you forget to use them, or you're not sure if you've got it to work, but even just trying to use my link, I really do appreciate it, whether it works or not. I just appreciate you thinking about it and trying to use my link. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this know-how video, looking at how I've been turning my mica powders into mica watercolour paints, and maybe you'll give it a go. If you bought this set when I did my first video on the mica powders, you might have had them sitting on the shelf and you just want a new use for them. This might be something that you want to try. And I do just think it's a really lovely process to make the paints as well. I know I said that quite a few times in the video, but I really did enjoy just making the paints as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!